Kelechi Nwosu was a self-made millionaire, the proud owner of Nwosu Luxury Hotels, a chain of high-end resorts known across Africa. His life looked perfect from the outside: money, power, respect. But on the inside, something was missing. Every woman he met seemed to be after only one thing: his bank account. They smiled sweetly when he pulled up in his sleek black Range Rover. They giggled at his jokes even when they weren't funny. They pretended to love him, but deep inside, he knew the truth. It wasn't him they loved. It was his money. And that's when an idea struck him. What if he became invisible? What if he stripped away his wealth, his power, and his name? Could he find a woman who would love him for his heart and not his fortune? One evening, as Kelechi sat in his penthouse apartment overlooking the city skyline, he turned to his best friend and business advisor. "Colonel, I'm tired," Kelechi said, his voice heavy with frustration. "Every woman I meet sees me as a walking ATM. They don't care about me, just what I can give them." Colonel, a sharp-eyed man with a talent for reading people, leaned back in his chair. "You're the most eligible bachelor in city, my brother. What did you expect?" Kelechi sighed. "I need to know if true love still exists. I have an idea, but it sounds crazy." Colonel raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." Kelechi took a deep breath. "I'm going undercover. I'm going to become a nobody. No cars, no luxury hotels, no private jets. Just a simple man doing an ordinary job. If I meet a woman who loves me when I have nothing, then I'll know it's real." Colonel's eyes widened. "Are you serious? What kind of job are you thinking about?" A small smile played on Kelechi's lips. "A cafe waiter." Colonel burst out laughing. "You? A cafe waiter? Do you even know how to make coffee?" Kelechi shrugged. "I'll learn. The important thing is blending in." Colonel shook his head, still chuckling. "This will be interesting." The next morning, Kelechi put his plan into action. His first stop was a small barbershop in Yaba. Gone was his neatly trimmed beard. Now, he had a rough, slightly unkempt look. He traded his designer suits for faded jeans, simple t-shirts, and worn-out sneakers. His Rolex watch, locked away. His expensive cologne, replaced with the scent of cheap soap. He looked at himself in the mirror. For the first time in years, he wasn't Kelechi the millionaire. He was just an ordinary man. After searching the city, he found the perfect place: Mama Beezy's Cafe. It was a small, busy coffee shop in the heart of city, filled with working-class people grabbing breakfast before heading to their jobs. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with the chatter of customers. Mama Beezy, the owner, was a tough but warm-hearted woman in her 50s. She eyed Kelechi with suspicion when he asked for a job. "You want to be a waiter? You don't look like someone who needs this job," she said, crossing her arms. Kelechi forced a nervous smile. I need a fresh start." Mama Beezy narrowed her eyes. "Do you have experience?" "Not really, but I can learn fast," she sighed. "Alright, but if you mess up, you're out." And just like that, Kelechi Nwosu, billionaire, became Kelechi the cafe waiter. The first day was a disaster. He spilled coffee on a customer. He got confused with orders. The other waiters, Yugo and Bimp, laughed at him. "Oga waiter, you know sabi anything." Yugo teased. "See as he day hold tray, like, say ego break." Bimp added, shaking her head. Kelechi felt humiliated. He had run a billion-dollar business, but here he was, struggling to carry a simple tray. But he refused to quit. He practiced every night, watching videos on how to pour coffee perfectly. He learned how to balance multiple trays. Slowly, he started improving, and that's when he met her. Her name was Zainab. She walked into the cafe one morning wearing a simple, but elegant Ankara dress. She had a warm smile and bright, intelligent eyes. Unlike other customers, she didn't just grab her coffee and leave, she greeted him. "Good morning, sir." No one had called him that since he started this job. He nodded, slightly surprised. "Good morning. What would you like?" "Just a cup of tea, and maybe a little smile," she teased, noticing his serious expression. Kelechi chuckled. She was different. He could feel it, but the biggest question remained: could a millionaire truly experience life as a poor man, and find real love? As Kelechi took her order, he knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. Kelechi stood behind the counter at Mama Beezy's cafe, adjusting the apron tied around his waist. It still felt strange. Just a few weeks ago, he was walking through the grand halls of Nwosu luxury hotels, where staff rushed to serve him the finest meals. Now, he was the one taking orders. The cafe was nothing like the high-end restaurants he was used to. It was small but lively, filled with the aroma of strong coffee and fresh pastries. The walls were painted a warm shade of yellow, giving the place a cozy feel. The customers were mostly teachers, office workers, and students, people who couldn't afford luxury but found joy in the little things. Kelechi wasn't just here to serve coffee, he was here to find something money couldn't buy. One day Kelechi's hands trembled slightly as he carried a tray of coffee and toast to a customer. He was still getting used to the job. Faster, Kelechi, Mama Beezy called out from behind the counter. Customers don't like to wait. Yes, Ma. Kelechi replied quickly. He hurried toward a table, but in his rush, he misjudged the distance. The tray wobbled, and before he could stop it, the coffee spilled all over the table. The customer, a grumpy old man, glared at him. Are you blind? Look what you've done. Kelechi apologized repeatedly, but the man wasn't satisfied. Mama Beezy sighed and handed Kelechi a rag. Clean it up, boy, and be careful next time. As Kelechi wiped the table, he could hear snickers from other waiters. Hugo, one of the senior staff, shook his head. This one won't last a week. But Kelechi wasn't a quitter. Just as the morning rush began to settle, the cafe's door swung open, and in walked Tund. He was hard to miss, dressed in an expensive white kaftan, gold chains around his neck, and a Rolex watch that he made sure everyone saw. He strutted to the counter, speaking loudly into his phone. My Benz just arrived yesterday. You know me, I don't do small things, he bragged, laughing. Mama Beezy barely glanced at him. What do you want, Tund? The usual, black coffee, extra hot. Kelechi quickly prepared the coffee and walked over to serve him. But just as he placed the cup down, Tund accidentally knocked it over. The steaming coffee spilled across the table and onto the dress of the woman sitting next to him. Zainab, she gasped, jumping up as the hot liquid soaked into the fabric. Instead of apologizing, Tund laughed. Ah, my bad. But no be my fault, nah the small waiter way no sabi anything, he said, pointing at Kelechi. The cafe went silent. Everyone expected Zainab to get angry at Kelechi. After all, she had been the one burned. But instead, she turned to Tund, her eyes flashing with anger. You think this is funny? She asked, her voice calm but firm. Tund smirked. Relax, babe. It's just a little coffee. A little coffee? You ruined my dress and embarrassed someone just for fun? The smirk on Tund's face faded. The cafe staff watched in shock. No one ever stood up to Tund, but Zainab didn't stop there. She grabbed a napkin and handed it to Kelechi. Here, don't let people like him get to you. Kelechi felt something stir in his chest. No one had ever defended him like that before, especially not a woman. Tund scoffed, clearly embarrassed. I don't have time for this nonsense, he muttered, throwing a few bills on the table before storming out. As soon as he left, the tension in the cafe eased. Kelechi turned to Zainab. I'm really sorry about your dress, she smiled. It's okay. Accidents happen. He hesitated, then asked, why did you stand up for me? She tilted her head. Because no one deserves to be treated like that. Kelechi felt a strange warmth in his chest. This woman was different. She wasn't like the others who had laughed at him, mocked him, or judged him for his job. And for the first time since he started this experiment, he felt hope. Maybe, just maybe, he had finally met someone who saw past appearances, someone genuine. But little did Kelechi know, Zainab had secrets of her own. Days turned into weeks, and Kelechi found himself looking forward to every morning at Mama Beezy's cafe. It wasn't just about the job anymore, it was her, Zainab. She came in at the same time every morning, 7:30 a.m. sharp, before heading to the school where she taught. Unlike other customers, she never treated Kelechi like a simple cafe worker. She saw him, really saw him. Their conversation started casually. Good morning, Kelechi. How's your day so far? She would ask as she placed her order. Better now that you're here, he would joke, making her laugh. But soon, their talks went beyond simple pleasantries. One rainy evening, just as Kelechi was about to close up, Zainab showed up unexpectedly. You're still here? He asked, surprised. I needed a quiet place to think, she admitted, sitting at the corner booth. Kelechi brought her a cup of tea and sat across from her. What's on your mind? He asked, gently. Zainab hesitated, then sighed. Life. She stared at her cup for a moment, before finally saying, it's my brother, Malik. He's all I have left. That night, Zainab opened up to Kelechi in a way she never had before. She told him about her past, about how she and her younger brother, Malik, had lost their parents in a tragic car accident 5 years ago. Since then, she had taken on the responsibility of raising him alone, making sure he had everything he needed. I worked 2 jobs just to keep him in school, she admitted, her voice heavy with exhaustion. Kelechi listened, his heart aching for her. That must be really hard, he said softly. She nodded. It is, but he's worth it. Malik is smart, kind. He deserves a good life, and I won't let anything stop him from having one. Kelechi admired her even more. She wasn't just beautiful, she was strong, selfless, and fiercely loyal. Unlike the women he had met before, Zainab never asked him for money or material things. She never even asked about his background, she simply enjoyed his company. And for the first time in his life, Kelechi felt something real. As the weeks passed, Kelechi and Zainab grew even closer. They laughed together. They shared their dreams. They became each other's safe space. Kelechi had never been so sure about anything before. She's the one, he told Kunal one evening. I finally found someone who loves me for who I am, not for my money. Kunal raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? You've only known her for a few months. I know her heart, Kelechi insisted. Kunal sighed. Alright, so what's your plan? Kelechi smiled. I'm going to tell her the truth. No more disguises, no more secrets. I'll take her out, tell her who I really am. And then I'll ask her to marry me. Kunal shook his head. You're moving fast, my friend. But Kelechi didn't care. For the first time in years, he was happy, and he was ready to take the next step. The night before Kelechi planned to reveal his true identity, he decided to surprise Zainab at her school. He bought a bouquet of roses and walked toward the gate, feeling nervous but excited. But just as he reached the entrance, he froze. There, standing just a few feet away, was Zainab, smiling, laughing, and holding hands with another man. Kelechi's heart stopped. His grip on the flowers tightened as he watched them talk, their faces filled with warmth and familiarity. Then, the man said something that made Kelechi's stomach drop. I can't wait to finally marry you, Zainab, the man said. Kelechi felt like the ground beneath him had collapsed. Mary, he whispered. He couldn't believe it. Zainab, the woman he thought was different, the woman he was ready to give his heart to, was engaged to someone else, and she never told him. Kelechi couldn't sleep, ever since he had seen Zainab with the other man. His mind had been in turmoil. Was she playing me all along? The thought burned in his chest. He replayed their moments together, the way she laughed at his jokes, the kindness in her eyes, the way she always listened when he spoke. Was it all a lie? Kunal had warned him, you're living in a dream, Kelechi. These women will always choose money over love. But Kelechi didn't want to believe it. Not her, not Zainab. Still, doubt clawed at his heart, and he needed answers. The next evening, he decided to follow her. After her shift at the school, Zainab didn't go straight home. Instead, she walked to a quiet cafe, not Mama Beezy's, but another one, tucked away from the busy streets. Kelechi hesitated outside. Should he really be doing this? Then, through the open window, he saw her sit across from her best friend, Aisha. Something about Zainab's expression made his heart sink. She looked broken, curious. Kelechi moved closer, careful to stay hidden. And that's when he heard the conversation that shattered him. Zainab, I have no choice, Aisha. I have to marry him. It's the only way to protect my brother, Aisha. But do you love him? Silence, a long, painful silence. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Zainab said, it doesn't matter. Kelechi staggered back. He felt like someone had punched the air out of his lungs. I have to marry him. It doesn't matter if I love him. The words echoed in his mind like a haunting melody. He gripped the wall for support. So it was true. Zainab had been leading him on, all this time, while planning to marry another man. I was just a distraction, he thought bitterly. Kunal's voice rang in his head. Now you see, love isn't real. She's just like the others. Pain twisted inside him like a knife. He had believed in her, trusted her, even thought she might be the one. But now he was just a fool with a broken heart. Or was he? Because something didn't feel right. Zainab's voice, the pain in it. She wasn't happy about this marriage. She sounded trapped. But why? What did she mean by protecting her brother? And who was the man she was marrying? A seed of doubt began to grow in Kelechi's mind. Kelechi could walk away now. He could forget her, erase her from his life, and move on. But a part of him refused. I need to know the truth. Something told him that Zainab wasn't who Kunal thought she was. Something told him that this wasn't just about money. And if he was right, then Zainab might be in more danger than he ever imagined. The grand wedding was the talk of the town. Wealthy guests arrived in sleek cars, stepping onto the red-carpeted entrance of Chief Danjuma's luxurious mansion. The event was nothing short of a royal celebration, golden chandeliers, silk-covered chairs, and a feast fit for kings. Yet, amidst all the glamour, Kelechi felt nothing but emptiness. He had no intention of interfering. He just wanted to see it with his own eyes. I need closure, he told himself. Once I see her happy with another man, I'll walk away forever. But as soon as he spotted Zainab, his chest tightened. She stood at the far end of the hall in a stunning gold and white wedding gown, her face covered with a delicate veil. She was breathtaking, but something was wrong. She wasn't smiling. Her hands trembled as she clutched the bouquet. And when someone congratulated her, she barely responded. Why does she look so afraid? Kelechi's curiosity turned into concern. Then, he heard something that stopped his heart. He had been moving towards the drinks table when he heard low voices from a side room. It was Chief Danjuma, the groom, speaking to two men in dark suits. Chief Danjuma, after tonight, her family's debt is cleared. Whether she likes it or not, she's mine. Man 1, she doesn't seem happy. What if she refuses? Chief Danjuma laughs coldly. She won't. She knows what's at stake. Kelechi froze. His blood ran cold. Debt? What debt? Then, it all made sense. Zainab wasn't marrying Chief Danjuma for wealth or status. She was being forced into this marriage to save someone, her brother. Kelechi's heart pounded. I was wrong about her. She was sacrificing herself to protect her brother, and he had almost walked away. Kelechi felt a storm raging inside him. He couldn't let this happen. But what could he do? Chief Danjuma was a powerful and dangerous man. He had bodyguards, connections, and money. Kelechi knew that if he stepped in now, he would be thrown out, or worse. He clenched his fists. Think, Kelechi, think. Then, he spotted something, a microphone. The wedding ceremony was about to begin, and there was a live broadcast for the guests in the hall. If Kelechi could expose Chief Danjuma's real intentions in front of everyone, the powerful businessman wouldn't be able to deny it. But there was no time to plan. The priest was calling for the bride and groom to come forward. Zainab took slow, hesitant steps towards the altar. Tears welled in her eyes. She wasn't just walking towards marriage, she was walking towards a prison. No, Kelechi thought. Not today. Not ever. He took a deep breath, and then, he made his move. The hall was silent. The priest's voice echoed as he spoke. Do you, Zainab, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Zainab's lips trembled. Her hands clutched the bouquet so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The air was thick with tension. Then, a voice rang out. Zainab, is this what you really want? Gasps filled the hall. Heads turned. Standing at the back of the grand wedding hall was Kelechi, his cap removed, his face now fully visible. His eyes were locked onto Zainab. She looked up, shocked. Chief Danjuma's expression darkened immediately. Who is this fool? He barked, signaling his men. Two large bodyguards in dark suits began moving toward Kelechi, but he didn't flinch. Tell them, Zainab, Kelechi said, his voice steady but full of emotion. Tell everyone the truth. Do you really want to marry this man? Zainab's lips parted. Tears welled in her eyes. For a moment, there was silence. Then, she slowly shook her head. No. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Chief Danjuma's face twisted in rage. You ungrateful. Before he could finish, another voice interrupted him. Stop right there. The doors burst open. Mama Beezy walked in, flanked by several cafe workers, Aisha, the cook, Kunal, and even some customers. They weren't alone. Two uniformed police officers followed behind them. The entire hall erupted in whispers and murmurs. What's happening? Who are these people? Why are the police here? Mama Beezy stepped forward, her voice ringing with authority. This wedding is a scam. And we have proof. She handed over a stack of documents to the police. One of the officers stepped forward and addressed the guests. Chief Danjuma is under investigation for fraud and illegal debt schemes. He has been manipulating people into signing fake debts and then forcing them into submission. This wedding is just another one of his traps. A stunned silence filled the room. Chief Danjuma's face paled. This is nonsense, he roared. These are lies. But Mama Beezy wasn't done. Oh really? She scoffed. Then why don't you explain these bank statements? The ones showing how you fabricated Zainab's brother's debt. The crowd murmured louder. Some guests even stepped away from Chief Danjuma, looking at him with disgust. The police officer turned to Zainab. Miss Zainab, do you wish to press charges? She hesitated, her hands trembling. Then, with newfound strength, she lifted her chin and said, Yes, I do. Chief Danjuma's rage exploded. You think you can do this to me? He turned to flee, but before he could take another step, the police grabbed him. Handcuffs clicked. A loud gasp rippled through the hall. It was over. Kelechi exhaled, his heart pounding. His eyes met Zainab's across the room. For the first time that day, she smiled, and Kelechi knew he had made the right choice. The hall was still buzzing with shock as the police led Chief Danjuma away. Some guests whispered in disbelief, while others shook their heads. disgusted by what had just been exposed. Zainab, standing at the altar in her wedding dress, let out a shaky breath. The weight of fear, the endless stress she had carried for months, was finally lifted. She turned, her eyes locking onto Kelechi's. Tears filled her eyes. "Why did you do this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kelechi took a step closer. His heart pounded, but this time, not with fear, with certainty. "Because I love you." A stunned silence filled the hall. Zainab blinked, her lips slightly parted. She searched his face, looking for any sign that this was a dream. "You love me," she whispered. Kunal, who had been standing in the corner, smirked and crossed his arms. "Well, it's about time," Mama Beezy chuckled knowingly. The guests gasped as realization dawned. Kelechi wasn't just a cafe waiter. He was Kelechi Okafor, the millionaire hotel mogul. Zainab's hands flew to her mouth. Her mind spun, struggling to process everything. You're a millionaire?" she whispered. Kelechi gave a small nod. "I was searching for something money couldn't buy, real love." Tears slipped down Zainab's cheeks. "And you thought you wouldn't find it with me?" He stepped even closer. "I did find it with you. But then I heard you say you had no choice but to marry Chief Danjuma. And I thought I had lost you." Zainab swallowed hard. "I never wanted to marry him, Kelechi. I only did it to save my brother." Kelechi smiled gently. "And that's why I love you. Because even when your world was falling apart, you still put others first." Zainab's chin trembled as she looked at him. "I don't care about your money, Kelechi. I just care about you." A slow smile spread across his face. "Then marry me." A collective gasp swept through the hall. Zainab's eyes widened. "What?" Kelechi took her hands. "Not because of debt, or pressure, or fear, but because you want to." She let out a breathless laugh, overwhelmed with emotion. "Yes." Cheers erupted. Mama Beezy clapped her hands together. Kunal chuckled. Even the skeptical guests who had been doubting the wedding now smiled. Kelechi reached into his pocket and pulled out a scholarship letter. "For your brother," he said, handing it to her. "He'll never have to worry about debt again." Zainab covered her mouth, tears spilling freely. "And one more thing," Kelechi added, turning to Mama Beezy. "I bought your cafe." Mama Beezy's jaw dropped. You what?" "Consider it a gift," Kelechi said with a grin. "For the woman who taught me that kindness is the real measure of wealth." The old woman's eyes glistened with tears, and she smacked his arm playfully. "Ah, you tricky boy. You could have told me." Laughter filled the hall, and for the first time that day, Zainab felt truly free. She looked at Kelechi, her heart swelling. "I love you," he smiled. "And I'll spend the rest of my life proving I love you too." The guests cheered as they embraced. It wasn't the wedding Zainab had planned, but it was the one she had always dreamed of. As Kelechi looked at Zainab, his heart felt lighter than ever before. When it was time for him to say a few words, he took a deep breath and smiled at the guests. "I started this journey believing love could be bought, that money determined worth. But I was wrong. True love isn't about riches, it's about sacrifice, loyalty, and kindness." He turned to Zainab, his voice softening. "And sometimes, the poorest man is the richest in love." Zainab smiled, her eyes shining with happiness. The guests applauded. Mama Beezy wiped a tear from her eye. Kunal nudged Kelechi with a smirk. "If you like the video, then please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel."